I was standing at the mahogany podium in our church, about to give the eulogy for my wife Helen, when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my son Marcus. At least, that's what I'd called him for the past 27 years. He leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear, and whispered, "Don't make this longer than it needs to be, Dad. We have important business to discuss afterward." Then he pressed something into my jacket pocket. I reached in and felt the thick envelope. Legal papers. At my wife's funeral. I didn't cry then. I couldn't. The shock had frozen something inside me. Let me back up. My name is Robert Chen. I'm 68 years old, and I came to this country from South Korea when I was 19 with $300 and a dream. I worked 3 jobs, saved every penny, and eventually opened a small dry cleaning business in Los Angeles. Nothing fancy, just honest work. I met Helen at a church picnic in 1979. She was volunteering, serving food to the homeless, and I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. Not because of her looks, though she was pretty, but because of the way she smiled at everyone like they mattered. We got married 6 months later. Everyone said we were rushing, but when you know, you know. We wanted children right away. Helen would have made the most wonderful mother. We tried for 5 years. Nothing. The doctors said it wasn't likely to happen. Helen cried for weeks. I held her every night and told her we'd find another way. Then we met Daniel. He was 8 years old, living in a group home after his parents died in a car accident. He had these big, sad eyes that looked like they'd seen too much for someone so young. No other relatives wanted him. Too much trouble, they said. He'd been bounced between 3 foster homes in 2 years. The social worker warned us he had behavioral issues, anger problems, trust issues. Helen looked at him and said, "He just needs someone to love him." We changed his name to Marcus Daniel Chen. Gave him our last name, our home, everything we had. The first year was hard. He'd wake up screaming from nightmares. He'd break things when he got angry. He stole money from Helen's purse twice. But we didn't give up. Helen would sit with him for hours, just talking, listening. I taught him how to work in the shop, gave him responsibilities. Slowly, he came around. By the time Marcus was in high school, you'd never know he'd had such a rough start. He was getting good grades, made the basketball team, had friends. Helen and I would look at each other across the dinner table and just smile. We'd done it. We'd given him the life he deserved. I worked 18-hour days to put Marcus through UCLA. He wanted to go to law school, and I wasn't going to let money stop him. I took out loans, sold the old house, and moved us into a smaller place. Helen went back to work as a receptionist. We didn't care. This was our son, our boy. He was going to have opportunities we never had. Marcus graduated from USC Law School in 2014. I was so proud I thought my chest would burst. Helen cried happy tears. We threw him a party at the shop, invited all our friends from the Korean church, spent money we didn't have on catering. Marcus gave a speech thanking us, said he'd never forget what we'd sacrificed for him. I believed every word. He got a job at a corporate firm downtown, started making good money, real good money. Within 3 years, he was making more than Helen and I had made in our entire lives combined. He bought a condo in Koreatown, drove a BMW. He'd come by the shop sometimes, always in a hurry, always on his phone. But he'd hug his mother, ask about the business. Things were good. Then he met Vanessa. She was a yoga instructor, or an influencer, or something. I never quite understood what she did for work, but she had expensive taste, designer clothes, fancy handbags. Marcus brought her to dinner one Sunday in 2021. Helen made kalbi, Marcus's favorite. Vanessa picked at her food, said she was vegan now, and Marcus should consider it too. She kept checking her phone, taking pictures of our house. Not in a nice way, in a way that made me feel like she was cataloging everything for later. They got married 6 months later. Small ceremony. Helen and I weren't invited to the planning. Vanessa said she wanted something intimate, just close friends. We weren't on the guest list. We showed up anyway because Helen insisted. Vanessa's face when she saw us there, I'll never forget it. Like we'd crashed a party we weren't good enough for. After the wedding, Marcus changed. He'd call less, visit less, always had an excuse. Work was busy. Vanessa needed him for something. They were traveling. Helen would sit by the phone sometimes, waiting for him to call. When he finally did, she'd light up like Christmas morning. She'd ask about his life, and he'd give short answers. Then he'd ask about the business. Always about the business. See, the business had grown. That little dry cleaning shop had turned into 3 locations, then 5, then 8. We'd bought the buildings, not just leased them. Los Angeles real estate, even in Koreatown, had gone up in value. The business was worth about $4.2 million by 2023. Not just the operations, but the properties, the goodwill, everything. Helen and I had registered it as a family LLC years ago, and we'd given Marcus a 20% share when he graduated law school. We thought it was a nice gesture, a way to say, this is your future too. That 20% would become our biggest mistake. Helen got sick in January of last year. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 8. Those 8 months, Marcus visited exactly 4 times. Vanessa came twice, both times with her phone out, recording videos for her Instagram. Dealing with family health crisis, she'd caption them with sad face emojis. Meanwhile, Helen was dying, and Vanessa was performing grief for strangers online. I spent those 8 months taking care of Helen. I'd close the shop early, hire extra help, anything to be with her. We'd talk about our life together, the good times. She'd apologize for leaving me. I'd tell her she had nothing to apologize for. We'd made a good life together. One day, about 2 weeks before she died, Helen asked me to get her purse. She pulled out a leather journal I'd never seen before. Her handwriting filled the pages. "Robert," she said, her voice weak, "I need to tell you something. I've been writing things down. Things I've noticed about Marcus and Vanessa. Conversations I've overheard. I didn't want to believe it, but I think they're waiting for me to die so they can take the business." I told her she was being paranoid, that the pain medication was making her think strange things. But she grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you'll read this after I'm gone. Promise me you'll protect yourself. I've already taken care of some things. Mr. Park knows what to do." Mr. Park was our lawyer, a good man from church. Helen died on September 15th, 2023. I held her hand as she took her last breath. Marcus and Vanessa showed up 20 minutes after she passed. They stayed for an hour. Vanessa took selfies with the hospital room in the background. I'm not joking. She actually did that. The funeral was 4 days later. That's when Marcus handed me the envelope. After the service, after everyone had said their condolences, after we'd buried my wife of 44 years, Marcus asked me to come to a conference room at his law firm. He said we needed to discuss the business succession. I sat in that cold conference room, still wearing my funeral suit, and Marcus slid a document across the table. Vanessa sat next to him, smiling. Not a kind smile, a shark smile. "Dad," Marcus said. And I noticed he didn't call me Dad much anymore, just when he wanted something. "Dad, I've had the business evaluated. With your shares and Mom's shares, you control 80%. I have 20%. I'm offering you 2 options. Option 1, you buy out my shares at fair market value. That's $840,000, due within 90 days. Option 2, we dissolve the LLC and sell everything, split the proceeds, according to our ownership percentages." I just stared at him. "Marcus, I don't have $800,000, and why would we sell? This business is our life. Your mother and I built this from nothing." Vanessa leaned forward. "Correction, Helen and you built it. Marcus deserves his inheritance now, not years from now. He has opportunities, investments he wants to make. His money is trapped in this outdated business model." Outdated? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "We have 8 locations. We're profitable." "What are you talking about?" Marcus pulled out another document. "I'm also filing a claim that when I graduated law school, you and Mom verbally promised the business would be mine. That I was always the intended successor. That I only worked at the firm to gain legal expertise to eventually take over. Therefore, I should have controlling interest, not just 20%. That's not true." I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. "We gave you those shares as a gift. We never promised you controlling interest. Helen and I were going to run this business until we retired. Then we'd decide together what to do. Marcus didn't even blink. That's your recollection. I have a different recollection. And I have witnesses who'll testify that you and Mom said the business was being built for me. What witnesses? Who? Vanessa pulled out her phone. We have several friends who've heard you say that Marcus was going to take over someday. That's an oral contract. Enforceable in California under certain conditions. I realized then what was happening. They'd planned this. Probably for months, maybe longer. And they'd waited until Helen was dead to execute it. You have 90 days to respond, Marcus said, standing up. I suggest you hire a lawyer. Though I should warn you, litigation is expensive. You might spend more fighting this than just selling the business and splitting the money. Think about it. They left me sitting in that conference room. I drove home in a daze. I kept thinking, this isn't real. This is some nightmare. I'll wake up and Helen will be there, telling me it's just a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. The next morning, Marcus filed a lawsuit. Not just a private family dispute, a real lawsuit, filed in Los Angeles County Superior Court. He was suing me for breach of oral contract, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He claimed I'd been mismanaging the business, taking excessive salary, and preparing to cut him out of his rightful inheritance. The local Korean newspaper picked up the story. Prominent business owner sued by son. I couldn't go to church without people whispering. Some took my side. Others said there must be some truth to Marcus's claims. Why else would he sue? A few said I should just give him the money, keep the peace. I hired a lawyer, Mr. Kim, from church. He was good, but Marcus had a whole firm behind him. Corporate lawyers who did this for a living. Mr. Kim looked at the case and said, Robert, I'll be honest. Even if we win, this will cost you maybe $300,000 in legal fees. Marcus knows that. He's betting you'll settle just to avoid the expense. But I couldn't settle. This wasn't about money. This was about my son looking me in the eye and trying to steal everything his mother and I had built. Everything we'd sacrificed for him. The lawsuit moved forward. Discovery started. Marcus's lawyers demanded every business record going back 20 years. Every bank statement. Every tax return. They were looking for ammunition. Anything they could use to make me look bad. They found a few years where I'd paid myself a bonus. Legal. Approved by the board, which was just Helen and me. But Marcus's lawyers spun it as excessive compensation and self-dealing. Then they filed for a temporary restraining order, claiming I was planning to sell off business assets to keep them from Marcus. It was a lie, but the judge granted it anyway. Suddenly, I couldn't make major decisions about my own business without court approval. My health started failing. I've had diabetes for 10 years, always managed it well. But the stress sent my blood sugar haywire. I ended up in the hospital twice with dangerously high levels. My doctor told me I needed to reduce stress, or I'd have a heart attack. But how could I reduce stress? My son was trying to destroy me. In February, Marcus filed a petition for elder abuse against me. Against me. He claimed I'd been verbally abusive to him during a phone call, that I'd threatened to destroy him, that I was unstable and dangerous. He got a temporary restraining order. I wasn't allowed within 500 feet of him or Vanessa. I wasn't allowed to contact them, except through lawyers. My own son. The Korean community was completely divided. Half thought Marcus was a greedy ingrate. Half thought I must have done something to deserve this. Old friends stopped calling. People I'd known for 30 years crossed the street when they saw me coming. Vanessa was documenting everything on social media, standing by my husband as he fights for his rights. Family trauma is real, breaking generational cycles. She had 50,000 followers now, all watching our family fall apart and giving her sympathy she didn't deserve. In March, Marcus's lawyers made their move. They filed an emergency petition claiming I was preparing to transfer business assets to a shell company to hide them from the lawsuit. Again, completely false. But they presented some old documents out of context, and the judge bought it. He appointed a neutral third party to manage the business during the litigation. I was locked out of my own company. The business I'd built with my hands, worked in for 40 years, and I couldn't even go into my own shop without the manager's permission. The court-appointed manager was nice enough, but he didn't understand the business. He didn't know our customers. He started making changes, raised prices, cut staff. Within 2 months, we'd lost 15% of our customer base. I was living off savings, and they were drying up fast. Legal fees were killing me. Mr. Kim said we needed another $50,000 to properly prepare for trial. I didn't have it. I was going to have to sell my house, the house Helen and I bought in 1985, to pay for lawyers to fight my own son. That's when I remembered Helen's journal. I'd put it in a drawer, couldn't bear to read it. But that night, sitting in my empty house, eating microwaved leftovers, I pulled it out. The first entry was from June of 2022, over a year before she died. Went to visit Marcus and Vanessa today. Marcus left his phone on the counter while he showered. It buzzed. I glanced at it. Text from Vanessa. Just a few more years, baby. Once they're gone, we'll have everything. I should ask him about it, but I don't want to believe my son would think like that. I felt sick. I kept reading. July 2022. Overhead, Vanessa on the phone with someone. She said, Marcus's parents won't live forever. He's sitting on a gold mine and doesn't even realize it. We just need to make sure the old man doesn't sell the business before then. She doesn't know, I heard. August 2022. Marcus asked very specific questions about the business valuation today. How much were the properties worth? What would happen to his shares if Robert or I died? He said he was just curious for his own financial planning, but something felt off. Page after page of observations. Things I'd dismissed or never noticed. Conversations that seemed innocent at the time but revealed a pattern. Helen had documented everything. The last entry was from 2 weeks before she died. I know I don't have much time. I've met with Mr. Park 3 times without Robert knowing. I've made arrangements. If Marcus is who I fear he's become, Robert will be protected. If I'm wrong, and Marcus truly loves his father, nothing will change. But I can't leave Robert vulnerable. I won't. I called Mr. Park the next morning. I'd been so wrapped up in the lawsuit, I'd forgotten Helen said he knew things. Mr. Park asked me to come to his office immediately. He pulled out a thick folder. Robert, Helen came to see me 7 times in the last year of her life. She was very concerned about Marcus and Vanessa. She wanted to protect you, but she didn't want to cause family conflict if she was wrong. So she set up what she called a trust trap. A what? Mr. Park explained. Helen created an irrevocable trust 3 months before she died. She transferred her 80% of the business into the trust. You're the lifetime beneficiary. You have full control of the business and all proceeds for as long as you live. But here's the key part. Marcus only inherits his 20% stake if he maintains a positive relationship with you and works in the business for at least 5 years after your death. If he files any legal action against you or the trust, his shares automatically revert to a charity designated. The Korean American Community Foundation. I couldn't breathe. But Marcus is suing me. He filed months ago. Exactly. Mr. Park smiled. The trust became active the moment Helen died. Marcus's lawsuit was filed after that date. According to the trust documents, he's automatically disqualified from inheritance. He gets nothing. The business is yours, completely. And when you die, it goes to charity. But why didn't you tell me this before? Helen's instructions were specific. I was to wait until Marcus showed his true nature. If he'd been patient and kind to you, if he'd waited for you to pass naturally and supported you in your grief, he would have eventually inherited everything. Helen hoped her suspicions were wrong. This was a test, Robert, and Marcus failed. But he's claiming he has 20% now. He's suing based on the original LLC documents. Mr. Park pulled out more papers. The LLC documents were superseded by the trust. These are filed with the state, properly notarized, completely legal. Marcus's shares were Helen's to transfer, and she transferred them into the trust. His current lawsuit is based on documents that are no longer valid. He doesn't know it yet because the trust was set up through a private attorney in San Francisco. It won't show up in standard business record searches. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. What about his claims? conversations, hours of them. Marcus and Vanessa discussing their plans. Here, listen to this one from July of last year. He pressed play. I heard Marcus's voice. The old man's attached to that business, but he's getting older. Once mom's gone, I give him 2 years max before he can't handle it. We file suit, claim he's mismanaging, get a conservator appointed, and force a sale. Vanessa, we're talking $4 million minimum. 2 years of playing nice with him is worth $800,000 to us. Vanessa's voice. What if he fights? Marcus. He's 67 years old with diabetes and no money for a legal fight. We drag it out, bleed him dry. Eventually, he'll have to settle. There were hours of recordings. Marcus and Vanessa plotting, discussing how to manipulate him, planning their strategy. Helen had somehow set up recording devices in their house. I don't know how she did it. Maybe she hired someone, but she documented everything. There's more, Mr. Park said. Helen suspected Marcus might be stealing from the business. She hired a forensic accountant. They found that over the past 3 years, Marcus has been taking money. Not a lot at once, just small amounts through various methods. Expense reimbursements that were inflated. Payments to shell companies for consulting services that don't exist. All told, about $180,000. But he's a lawyer. He has money. Not as much as you think. We found out Vanessa has massive credit card debt, over $300,000, designer clothes, jewelry, trips. They're drowning financially. Marcus's salary is good, but they spend more than he makes. They needed your business money to bail themselves out. I sat there in shock. My son, the boy I'd raised, had been stealing from me and planning to take everything. Mr. Park continued. Helen left instructions. If Marcus filed suit, I was to wait until he'd committed enough resources that he couldn't back out. Then I was to file a counter motion revealing the trust, the recordings, and the embezzlement. She wanted to make sure he couldn't just withdraw the lawsuit when he realized he'd lost. When do we do it? The trial's scheduled for next month. Marcus has spent, according to our estimates, about $200,000 on legal fees so far. He's pot committed, as they say in poker. We file our motion 1 week before trial. Give him just enough time to panic, but not enough time to develop a strategy. That week was the longest of my life. Marcus's lawyers had been cocky. Sure, they had me cornered. They'd even filed a motion for summary judgment, claiming the facts were so clear in their favor that the judge should rule without a trial. The judge denied it, but they were confident. Then Mr. Park filed our counter-motion. 50 pages of evidence, the trust documents, the recordings, the embezzlement proof, witness statements from people Helen had spoken to, everything. I wish I could have seen Marcus's face when his lawyers called him. The next day, I got a call from Marcus. First time he'd called me directly in months. "Dad," he said, and his voice was shaking. "Dad, we need to talk. This is all a big misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding? You sued me. You tried to take everything your mother and I built. You stole money from the business. I can explain all of that. The recordings are taken out of context. The money, those were legitimate expenses. We can work this out. Families shouldn't fight like this." "You're right," I said. "Families shouldn't fight like this. But you're not my family anymore. You're just someone I once knew, someone I loved, someone who turned out to be a stranger. Dad, please. I'm sorry. I'll drop the lawsuit. We'll pretend this never happened." "Too late. You already filed elder abuse charges against me. You tried to have me declared incompetent. You humiliated me in front of my community. Your mother trusted you, and you waited until she was dead to show who you really are." Marcus's voice got hard. "So that's it? You're just going to let me go to prison for the embezzlement charges?" "I haven't decided yet. The prosecutor is very interested in the evidence. They're talking about several felonies: wire fraud, theft, filing false documents. You could get 5 to 10 years. He was quiet for a moment. "What do you want?" "I want you to stand up in court and tell the truth. I want you to admit you made up the oral contract story. I want you to admit you filed a false elder abuse claim. I want you to return every penny you stole. And then I want you to leave. Leave Los Angeles. Leave California. and never contact me again. Dad, I can't. My career, my life is here. You should have thought about that before you tried to destroy me. These are my terms. Take them, or face the prosecutors. The trial never happened. Marcus agreed to everything. He stood in front of Judge Morrison and admitted he'd fabricated the oral contract claim. He admitted the elder abuse charges were false. He agreed to return the $180,000, though he had to sell his condo and his car to do it. Vanessa filed for divorce 2 days later. Apparently, broke Marcus wasn't as attractive as rich Marcus. The restraining orders were dismissed. The court-appointed manager was removed, and I got my business back. The Korean newspaper ran another story. Son's greed exposed. Father vindicated. People who'd shunned me suddenly wanted to have lunch, to apologize. I accepted some apologies. Others, I politely declined. Marcus moved to Phoenix 6 months ago. I heard he's working at a small firm there, trying to rebuild his reputation. I don't know if he'll ever understand what he threw away. A father who loved him. A mother who protected him even after death. A family that chose him when no one else wanted him. I think about that 8-year-old boy sometimes. The one with sad eyes, who just needed someone to love him. I wonder when he disappeared and this stranger took his place. Or maybe he was always there, and Helen and I just couldn't see it. I still run the business. 8 locations, all profitable. I hired good managers, people I trust. I work less now, maybe 4 hours a day. I spend my afternoons at Helen's grave, telling her about my day. I tell her she was right to protect me. I tell her I'm sorry I didn't believe her when she first had doubts. The trust is ironclad. When I die, the business goes to the Korean American Community Foundation. They'll use it to help immigrant families start businesses, give scholarships to kids who need a chance. Helen wrote in the trust documents that she hoped the business would help other forgotten children, the way we tried to help Marcus. I adopted him when he was 8 years old. I gave him everything. At my wife's funeral, he handed me legal papers trying to take my life's work. He thought I was just a helpless old man. He thought his mother was gone and couldn't stop him. But Helen knew. She knew her son better than I did. And from beyond the grave, she protected me. People ask if I regret adopting Marcus. They ask if I wish I'd never brought him into our lives. The answer is complicated. I regret how it ended. I regret that love wasn't enough. But I don't regret trying. Helen and I gave a child a home, a family, opportunities he never would have had. We did it because it was right. The fact that he threw it away, that's on him, not us. I'm 68 years old now. I have my health, mostly. I have a business. I have good friends. I have memories of a woman who loved me enough to protect me, even after she was gone. Marcus took a lot from me, but he didn't take that. Last month, I got a letter from him. No return address, postmarked from Phoenix. Inside was a check for $18,000. A note said, "First installment. I'm paying back what I stole, even though you said I didn't have to. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just want you to know I understand what I destroyed. I'm sorry." I deposited the check. I didn't write back. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday the anger will fade enough that I can remember the good years without the poison of the bad ones seeping in. But not today. Helen's grave has fresh flowers every week. I bring them on Tuesdays. Sometimes I sit there for hours, just talking to her. I tell her about the business, about the scholarship fund we started in her name, about the quiet life I'm building in the wreckage Marcus left behind. And I tell her she was right, about everything, the trust, the recordings, the protection. She saw what I couldn't. She loved Marcus enough to hope she was wrong, but she loved me enough to make sure I'd survive if she was right. That's real love, not the kind that demands reciprocation, not the kind that keeps score, the kind that protects, the kind that plans ahead, the kind that says, even when I'm gone, I'll still take care of you. I have that love in my memories. Marcus had it in his life and threw it away. One of us got the better deal. And for the first time in a year, I know which one.